Yeah.
Oh,
Welcome to the Season 80 SBA Entry Draft. Hello, everyone. We got another 20 pick first rounder coming your way. And by we, I mean my co-host slash analyst. Here we have Nepto. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
And we also have Tomato. Hello.
hello.
Are you guys excited to check out some of the SBA's future now that we have another draft process to go through?
Very much so.
I was hoping for both of you to talk at the same time, but alas, wasn't successful.
Much synergy.
Yeah. All right, let's get the normal talking points out the way. Unfortunately, the Houston Ravens are once again your reigning, defending, undisputed SBA champions of the world. And and also they're picking in the top 6 again, so maybe things are still as they once used to be. The Las Vegas Jokers fell in the semifinals to the Los Angeles Rush, and neither of those teams are picking in the top 16. Rush do have a pick at 17th. Are you guys confident that there's gonna be more parity now at the top, or are you expecting one of you is in the Houston Ravens program currently? So let's go with you, Tomato. Are you expecting the Houston Ravens to pick up a couple of more finals berths in the upcoming seasons?
Oh yeah, I mean the team is not done
for
yet,
sure.
even in its current state. So I wouldn't imagine them falling out of business anytime soon.
Yeah.
At least one season more, I think, before they have to retool. But you know how long a Houston retool takes, so.
Yeah, 20 minutes there or thereabouts. And obviously my username on the forums is, or at least on the Discord, is bright red, so you know what that means. Nepto, then, the entry draft here, we have the draft board on the screen. Mexico City Ocelots are picking first and third, and the Seattle Knights are sandwiched in between them at second, Miami at fourth, and Vancouver to round out the top 5. Another year where a team has 2 top picks in the lottery. Mexico City is one team that could use good players, but also do have a lot of options for their future in a way. So, what do you take? What do you see the Mexico City Ocelots' future?
I mean, they already got a large amount of fairly young players. Maybe not all of them on the very high level, but that's not really needed if you build well around Brando as your go-to guy for the next 4 seasons. So I reckon they will pick someone that complements him, and maybe even 2 guys if they fancy very deep rotation. If not, they could also look to sell high. We have a lot of first-gen talent that GMs are probably eager to get their hands on. So this might be the chance to capitalize for more assets down the road.
Yeah, and we also had the Miami Vice here picking fourth with 59 wins. They won their Eastern Division in the SBA this season. Good signs for them for sure, do you think? Shouldn't be much to complain.
No, there's not much to complain about Miami.
The pick
I really
is from
like the
Boston,
style.
I think.
Yeah, I honestly lost track where that was.
Yeah, either Boston or Charlotte.
Traded a couple years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, Boston
right,
or Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Yeah. A lot of those trades, Boston and Charlotte.
and Philly. I reckon, okay, draft day, 1 Philadelphia trade at least, 1 Charlotte trade involving one of the Mullins brothers somehow.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who makes the 3rd trade. Oh, Ravens get another 3-and-D player as a steal or something like this.
Yeah.
And they have the trifecta of draft day.
Yeah. See, at some point we could just start doing reruns of one of these episodes, because eventually it's gonna be just a deja vu of the previous seasons. But yeah,
we should We should do a draft bingo with TPE rewards. That would be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. If you get, well, yeah, let's workshop that for next season for a fun bit, because that actually seems like something that might be possible. But here on the screen we have General Manager DB's best available players, and his list starts off with Ace Rodrigo, Allen Richmond, then Dunbar McLeod, Caleb Grant, Alejandro Jimenez, and then Austin Tentacles. 2 point guard eligible players at the top 2 spots. Does this speak of the character of the current draft class, or do you just think that DB is most confident of these 2 specific players? What do you guys think of Rodrigo, Allen Richmond, and Donovan McLeod? Let's go in order, Nepto or Tomato first.
Well, Allen Richmond comes from a long line of players, as you may know.
Yes.
I'm not the biggest fan of his build, because it's very weird. It's a CPG. I don't know if you know the C part.
Well, I just went with the point guard eligible, but yes, center / point guard, 6'4" only.
Yeah, so he could be interesting, but I just don't see him at the current point in his build as doing much of anything in the SBA. Because he kind of went for the balanced approach. If you look at his stats, they kind of spread out and stuff. But I think he could be an interesting player, because we haven't seen many of those, I think. Ever since we got the new positions, I don't think we've had any like big time star who had this.
Yeah, actually, I don't think there's been a real starter in the SBA in general. I know under the...
There's been the former player of the same player agency who played point guard power forward, I believe.
Yeah. There is Sebastian Allen Richmond, maybe. Yeah. So that is something, but point guard / center, like obviously with the old freak archetypes, we had point guard freaks who were like profiling basically to be both point guard and center defender. So we had a couple of those playing mainly these 2 positions, and over their careers, I think Scott Henry, Ollie Carl Carter is one of the only ones I can remember for sure starting a majority of season at point guard and then a majority of another season at center. But that's 6'8" as well.
Much taller.
Yeah. So, well, let's go with you, Nepto. What do you think about the ordering here as a whole of the DB's best available list? Who would you have as your top 5 of best available?
I mean, obviously the 2 Lightning guys, so Tentacles and McLeod are top of it, because how else could they be?
Yeah. Then it gets more interesting.
then it gets more interesting. I think, depending on what Jeff wants to do with Ito, he could be a great prospect, because Jeff knows how to build his guys. I like the theoretical potential that someone like Caleb Grant or Ben Less could have in the right systems. For entirely different reasons, those 2, Grant more on the offensive side, so a good defensive team that enables him, and Less as a very good specialist for a team that lacks rebounding and desperately needs it, and he's the best guy for that. Yeah.
Do you think Devenius Galizzi, that's been a dream of mine to say it out loud for TP even, do you think he's not served right being placed at 9 here? Is there some sort of underrating going on what do you think of the build for the small forward / shooting guard?
I mean, we've talked about it last draft in the length, so I'm not going to repeat all of the talking points we said, but he falls into the same trap of being very volume heavy, so he's going to want the ball in a sense a lot. And I'm not sure if a team is willing to give that responsibility to a first gen straight away. He has a solid build, which can definitely be great for the future, but he first will need to show that he can produce results with this build and is reliable to to be built around for the next 7 seasons or so.
Yeah, and obviously teams nowadays are built a bit different, where you can't necessarily hide your weaknesses in a similar way as you could in the even season 40s and 50s, or even in the 30s, because you have countless examples of first gens having maybe this even like exact sort of build and eventually being just like normal good players, but eventually is eventually, whereas first year it's gonna be a lot of growing pains. But yeah, rated number 9 or ranked number 9 on DB's best available, I'd bump him up a couple of positions if I was personally in charge of this one. But should we get going with the first overall selection? Also, yeah, before we move on to the first overall selection, I really like to point out the player at 14th, taking up 2 lines for his name. We'll revisit that once in the future. Yeah, the first pick is in, and the Mexico City Ocelots are going with Austin Tentacles. So it is indeed your boy, Squid from the Fort Lauderdale Lightning, at power forward and center, 6'9", 250 pounds of heft in this player. So your player, or your player you coached, gets picked first overall. Is this the first time?
I'm not sure. Could be.
I think maybe. That's a very assertive way of saying I don't know.
I'm trying to think back, especially like the last 6-7 seasons, if anyone got drafted first overall, but I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think you'd remember if that was the case. So what about Austin Tentacles? What makes him the first overall pick then, Nepta?
I think it's exactly what I mentioned a couple minutes earlier. He fits really well as a supporting piece to Brando. He can do everything you want from him on the court, be that defense, be that rebounding, be that passing, and stretching the floor a little bit with his shooting. So he got a great base to support the already more mature players on the roster. And on top of it is a great guy, so definitely a great choice by Mexico to pick him up here.
Yeah, the attribute radial here, you can see there's, like you mentioned, 3-point shooting, passing, defense, so could fit the bill for basically any team. But yeah, the logjam, not to call it a logjam, but the possible logjam in Mexico City Ocelots will be very interesting to follow along this upcoming weeks and possibly upcoming seasons. Tomato, do you have any thoughts on this first overall selection here, Tentacles?
Honestly, I just think Nepta hit it right on the head. He is exactly the type of guy you need when you have a player like Brando on the court.
Yeah,
just a support piece as the other big. A very good pick by Mexico here.
Yeah, I would mostly agree. I necessarily don't have anything else to add, and congratulations to Squid and Austin Tentacles for being picked first overall here. Then the second overall selection, the Seattle Knights are picking Ben Laws. Ben Laws, a 7'1" center of the very well reputable Dusty Wilson 22 player agency. Like you also alluded to it before in the analysis, a lot of rebounding, a lot of like sturdiness, but possibly not all that versatile as of now. So what Seattle are gonna be moving apparently much more into their possible futures rather than their possible presents, like we possibly how many times could I possibly say possibly? Yeah, like we speculated last offseason. So Ben Laws, a good pick here, or yeah. Thoughts on Ben Laws going second overall?
I like it. I love Dusty and I love his players. I think he's great at building them. I think he knows what he's doing at this point. Seattle is kind of in a weird spot. They don't have a lot of players, but what they do have is scorers. So they needed someone who would do the other stuff. And Lass is a super rebounder who doesn't really do much else. It's just a nice pick to slot in there, especially to go alongside Kelly Clarkson. And it's an OD player. It's gonna be a monster scorer sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
So Lass is just gonna fit right in there in that system. Because I assume, he's gonna be capped out on the rebounding stuff pretty soon.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he'll improve on his defense before the season starts. There's just like a very nice pick alongside that.
Yeah. Netto, there's no players on the Seattle Knights roster from last season who has an offensive rebounding rating of more than 25. And there's no player on the Seattle Knights roster who has a defensive rebounding rating of more than 81. So this is also in a way the very rare also a pick for need as well. What do you think of the possibility of Ben Lass vacuuming up rebounding records already on his rookie contract?
I think it's a match made in heaven for those two right now. They desperately need rebounding, not to win games right now, but to be competitive and show to maybe free agents that it's worth coming there. Especially with those score-heavy wings we've seen in the recent drafts, or even this draft. So a great pickup for Seattle, and Lass can get to his goal of racking up rebounds for the rebounding record pretty quickly.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see if there's no sort of alternate account and possible ban upcoming for Dusty Wilson as the previous rebounding record try possibly was. So my fingers crossed for the best of luck and the healthy future of Ben Lass in Seattle. Next, we do have a trade where the Miami Vice are trading up one spot in the draft to secure their selection and giving Mexico City the 4th overall selection and a future first rounder. To me, this read like a very cheap price to pay for jumping up the one position, but I guess if the Ocelots weren't certain on selecting one of the available players immediately, I guess it makes sense to just get a flyer, possible 82 Miami first rounder. Any thoughts on that one, guys?
I'm not sure honestly on the trade, because just simply because of how Miami's trajectory has been lately.
Mm-hmm.
They've been great at turning around quickly, at getting what they need. Especially right now, they have a great roster, and they're backing it up now with a 3rd pick overall. I just don't see them being bad enough in 2 seasons to make this pick any good.
Yeah.
But also, if you're Miami and you get the call and you don't really care, you have a lot of possible picks in the next couple of picks, or if you just want to trade it away anyways, then why not?
Or if you're Mexico.
I meant it. Sorry.
Yeah, because only just it takes one player off the board, and if you are content with picking like 1 of 5 players, then maybe it doesn't really matter that much altogether. Yeah, so with that move, the draft board currently sits like thus. Ocelots and Vice swapping places there in essence, well, also in actuality. The Miami Vice are then selecting Alejandro Jimenez. Jimenez, a point guard / shooting guard, 6'2", played for the Tuscan Hyenas last season. And a lot of point guard skill there. Steals, quickness, handles, and passing. Steven Adebayo and Garrett Lennox-Sapcho are both point guard eligible, as well as I'm not sure if they're going to retain the services of Trevelyan, Pagano, or the other point guard eligible players. So there's room for a player like Jimenez, but it's going to be a bit of a knock or a blow to be backing up such great talented players where you necessarily don't have the room to start in the, upcoming 3 seasons. So thoughts on this pick for Miami, Nepto?
I think this is very much in line with what Miami has been doing these last couple of seasons. Built a deep squad with guys who pass, rebound, and defend a lot. And Jimenez, as you said, will have to live with reduced minutes in a reduced role early on because of all these other good guys that are in front of him, especially also at his position. But I really like the pick. As soon as he hits a 3-point shot, he's the typical player you would expect for this roster. So if he can live with it, he himself has to decide. But from a team perspective and a success perspective, I think there's many worse places to be in.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they will be the number 1 team in the East again next season, it'll make the lower playing time much more palatable. Any further thoughts on Alejandro Jimenez, Tomato?
I mean, I think Nepto said it all, honestly.
Yeah. Straightforward situation, and we look forward to monitoring how Jimenez gets on behind this possible future Hall of Famer. Another trade, so the fourth overall selection is once again moving hands, so the Ocelots eventually end up getting a lot for their third overall pick, so 3 future first round picks and 2 of them from the worst team in the league last season. Any takes on this being much more interesting? Well, for sure it is much more interesting, but much more in line with the expectancy value for a 4th overall pick, 3rd overall pick, now that the bundle is sort of complete.
Yep, this is much more makes much more sense. And I mean, you can see that Vancouver really wants that player. I mean, 2 first-round picks in the coming 2 seasons from a team that is not very good and is not going to turn very good very quickly is a lot of value.
Yeah, and also, you can go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Nepto what he thought, because he started saying something.
Yeah, exactly.
I cut him off. Yeah.
I was about to pass on the torch to Oka himself, since he is a part of the Wolverines, and so far I think you're the lone real building block if we discard last season's corpse of Montecchia still playing with you. So now
surely
you're getting
someone of that age can't be a building block, yeah.
So you're going to add 2 more players to the roster. How does that make you feel as a player? Because there's not much wiggle room to add new blood in the next 2 seasons then.
I think it'll be much more interesting to take a look at the players first, because I'm in charge of this presentation. I don't want to act as if I don't know who the players upcoming are. So the most astute viewers might recognize that there is also Jeff's own player in the draft currently, so you could bet a lot of money that the Jeff's own player is going to be picked in the next 2 picks for Vancouver. In short, to answer your question, yeah, it'll be cool to have more players on the team. It's usually weird being the oldest player, like starting to carry the torch on a team, but I guess that's just how things are gonna be. Yeah, and with the 4th overall selection, the Wolverines do select Dunbar McLeod. And Dunbar McLeod, another one of your Lightning players from last season, Bert Gibby's point guard / shooting guard, 6'3", interestingly. That's pretty cool. And 185 pounds. What can you tell us, Nepto, about Dunbar McLeod and his talents?
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward from the attribute screen in the top left what he is, and he's a perfect floor general. He passes the ball well. He has some handling already, which is rare in the SBDL, mostly because it's not that needed, but it's a nice touch and fits his overall vision. He can steal the ball as well. He can shoot the free solidly. So certainly someone to set up a budding scorer on his team, like the Wolverines might have.
Yeah,
Just
that might cut down my turnovers per game as well. Actually getting like passes from the teammates. Yeah, well, we can check out the next player as well and then talk about the Wolverines' new additions in combination, as we know they are on the clock. So with the 5th overall selection, Kazumasa Ito is selected by the Vancouver Wolverines. So this is Jeff's straight to the draft player I was mentioning earlier, a power forward / center player. So now the Wolverines have 3 of the 5 spots that you'd usually need to fill on a basketball court sort of set, unless any sort of conflict happens in the future. So I'll toss this one to you, Tomato. 2 questions. If you were Jeff in this situation, how would you approach your player build? And the other one being, do you like having point guard, shooting guard, and 1 big instead of what we very commonly see with 2 bigs and then a guard?
I do. I actually like it very much because I'm of the belief that if you're gonna have 2 scorers nowadays on an SBA team, you want it to be a guard and a big. And you want the other positions to be filled with utility guys, with defense guys. And this is exactly what Jeff is kind of building here. Granted, we do not know what he's going to do with Kazumasa Ito, because we'll find out when the season starts, because it's a straight to the draft player. But I think this is the ideal building blocks for a team to kind of grow around. Because we have you have his own player, and we have another PG. And it's just, the perfect kind of big 3, I guess.
Yeah.
I like this build a lot.
Yeah, and the other question being, if you were now Jeff, how would you be approaching your build, like from the ground up? Because you start with 0 TP.
Yeah, I think I would start off focusing on the defense. Because, if you're a GM, you usually don't care as much about your own, pumping your own stats. Because if you see a team doing well, that kind of works both ways. So if you focus on defense first, you can support what you're doing, you can support Dunbar, and then kind of just go in a more specific direction when you guys all are more grown up and you know what's possible on the market to get a free agent. Because you might end up grabbing a great defensive big and then Kazumasa can go full offense, and that works. Or you might end up grabbing like a great perennial all-star offensive big, and then you want to focus your own player on defense. There's just a lot of moving blocks at this point in a team's life cycle, I think.
Yeah, I also do mostly agree with what you were saying there, and I would also nudge towards some sort of optionality, not to go full tilt in either one of the directions. So you'd either go with like 85s here and there. Obviously, it's much cheaper to invest in good defense than good offense, as we know at this rate. So it's probably more reasonable to start with defense. But Nepto, you've been around the Wolverines sometime, so you possibly have a good idea about what Jeff would think. You played with Damir Kovacic too, I think. Yeah.
I think Tomato has it mostly right that Jeff has some options here, some versatility, and he's going to use it to what benefits the team the most. However, I personally would say defense is the way to go for Ito, because it's not like you have draft picks in the next 2 years to acquire your big scorer to grow alongside the other 3. So you're most likely looking at free agency, and finding an offense or score first big is always going to be easier in free agency than a defense first big, and it gets way easier to attract those guys when you have lots of touches and scoring opportunities waiting for them. So I would lean for the defensive side for him, but Jeff will surely figure it out and make a successful team out of this.
Yeah, I think we could talk about this for like 4 hours, because I was also going to suggest that, well, you could go full offense yourself, because then who knows, there's in 4 seasons you have a draft where you have players like Stone Cold Steve Austin falling to 15th overall or whatever, and then you immediately have a same level of defender that you've spent 3 seasons yourself building.
True.
But yeah, we can talk about this separate time, as we have further draft picks to cover. For example, the 6th overall selection here, the Houston Ravers are selecting Ace Rodrigo Allen Richmond. And yeah, as we talked about earlier, a center point guard player from the Henderson Honey Badgers. Is Henderson? Yeah, never mind. Henderson used to be another school. Yeah, 6'4", very interesting attributes radial. As you said, a balanced sort of overall talent profile. A lot of 3-point shooting and handling and passing, though, at least like reasonable for a backup sort of guard player, but also like reasonable for a rookie center defender sort of stuff. Maybe outside the jumping and strength attributes. Tomato, what do you think about Ace Rodrigo going to Houston to be your future teammate?
I think if anyone can make a PG center work, it's Houston. I also think this is kind of the ideal environment to just check out how he works, because Houston has quite a deep team at the moment. I think we're like 7 deep, so this is gonna be our 8th. So you can just kind of slot him in for as much as you need to see how he works, how much work he can put in. And it's also like, if you're gonna have him be your main bench guy, PGC is a great combination for a bench guy, because you can, as you said, kind of works there. So you get that versatility of the bench, which I like. But I'm still not sold on the build. I will have to see it kind of grow, but I also haven't talked with Theory, so I don't know where he's going. I assume MSM did his research and he's happy with what's offered. So I think it'll be interesting.
Is Rashida Ryder the only eligible player to play shooting guard on the team now? Or maybe Action Jackson is also.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, then it doesn't matter as much, because I was like thinking like for the perfect combination, I'm sure at this specific example, you would have maybe liked shooting guard / center, but I actually don't know, because Iggy Hendricks is also like a quirky player in that sense. So yeah, it's a very good, and yeah, I think the scoring numbers that you see here on the screen currently are the statistics for the SBDL season. It's gonna paint a completely different picture than this player's future in the SBA might be, because it says 24 points per game, 10.3 assists, 7 rebounds. I'd be surprised that if Allen Richmond ever reaches, even at 1,200, 1,300 TP, would reach those numbers, just because of the positional versatility and the eventual, like, sort of being jerked around the lineup a lot, just because he's a good option in, well, hopefully will be a good option in both positions. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see this player's future. Any further thoughts?
I think he'll reach the scoring without a problem later. The assists, probably not, because he'd have to be a straight up point guard, I think, to get 10 assists.
Yeah.
The center minutes will just be too painful.
Yeah. Any further thoughts on the Allen Richmond, Nepto?
Nothing to add from my end.
All right. We'll be moving on to the 7th overall selection then, where we have Devanius Glizzy. And yeah, a small forward / shooting guard actually ended up being picked above the touted GMDB's early rankings of 9th, I believe it was. So a 6'5" small forward / shooting guard out of the Portsmouth Hydra. Very sort of like interesting SBDL career.
Yeah, those stats are wrong.
Yeah.
Apologies, I didn't catch it beforehand.
Me neither. I looked through it 4 times and maybe I just checked the height and weight. Let's take a look now that we got this underway of Galizi's actual statistics, because I believe he scored more than 30 points per game.
Yeah, he scored roughly over 30 points per game. Not on great efficiency though. I think developing his jumping more would have helped him more in that regard than some other things. But overall, this now makes 2 wing scorers on the rampage, together with like a pass first point guard, a defense first center, and a all-around forward. So that's certainly an interesting team combination you have going there.
Yeah.
I think Galizia is kind of being set up as a replacement for McBuckets, because they fill a very similar role, I would say.
But do you guys not think that you would be served well to have both of them maybe? Because if you just instead replace, I guess, Obadiah Christ or Ray LaFleur, well, Obadiah Christ would be the player because he's not under contract currently. So yeah, I can see what you're saying, but also it'd be very interesting to have the exact team that Nepto sort of lined out there, because that's like super firepower that might never win a championship, but could sort of possibly beat anyone.
You have a lot of firepower on the wings, and I'm not sure if we really had a team in the past decades even who
I think
mainly
it's
revolved
like
around the shooting guard and small forward and no one else in terms of score.
I think like the mid to late season 40s Las Vegas Jokers would have been one, like with Pierre Manslapper and then Matt Damon and the Matt Thomas. Was it Matt Thomas?
Yeah.
Not Matt Thomas.
But they still had Christopher Young, I believe, at power forward, so he also was like a big time scorer for them.
Maybe Christopher Young was small forward / center eligible, or small forwards, freak, so it's a bit different. So it was more natural in a way. So then maybe the comparison would be like, Boston Minutemen while I played there for, but Trindle Anderson was very good, so it's also different. It's a very rare combination, and if it just shakes out to be sort of like normal and min-maxed in a way, it'll be a little bit more boring. But I guess possibly like also as the word goes, min-maxing, so you maximize your future odds even if you are boring.
Well, to be fair, Oklahoma had some very nice results with 2 wing scorers. I'm sure Nepto you remember with Magnus and Bridges.
Yeah, but there was also this big guy who won like 3 Center of the Years and an MVP.
I mean,
on the
sure,
same
but
team.
he didn't really score
So
that
it wasn't
much,
entirely the wing scorers. They were certainly part of it, but I would say
There is
without
still
Lundell, the
DJ
team wouldn't be as
Obalamo on the
dangerous.
team, so you never know which way it goes.
Obalambo, who I called a possible Hall of Famer last time when we signed off. But like you used to have guys like Patrice Lumumba and Detroit Red. Like those are some real wing scorers. Not to mention Elena Rossi. That sort of.
Omar Bull,
Bull,
all-time fan favorite.
Yeah, so they had some of that there with Ekstrom and was it Bridges? Yeah,
it was Bridges.
Who else? Just like a 10-second thought exercise. If I don't come up with anything in 10 seconds, then we'll move on to the next pick. Oh fuck, 10 seconds already over. I was gonna say something about the Washington Wild, but 10 seconds already passed. Moving on to the trade alert. Brian Austin heading to the Inferno, and Benson Royal, who apparently is the odd one out, after we discussed that in terms of the Philadelphia Prowlers last season, heading to Brooklyn with a season 82 Arizona first round selection. And the Prowlers are making out like bandits here in this exchange with Javon Devon and a 8th overall selection here. Any quick thoughts or first immediate thoughts on this trade? Who got the best of it? What do you like? Do you like Benson Royal heading to Brooklyn, or is it maybe still a bit too full?
I will defer to Tomato because it's once again one of his teams that's impacted.
Yeah.
Let me take a quick look at Benson Royal. I believe he's like, that's a young defensive big.
Yeah.
Which is actually interesting. Because you still don't have spots for him. I think he's gonna have to play backup.
Yeah,
He's
that's
gonna
what
be
I'm
a
saying. Like, it's still full
yeah.
in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Well, I like it as much as it's nice having players that are more defensive, because we, as Brooklyn, were great offensively last season. We sucked on defense, though. So any type of player who can help us kind of shore up those downsides is bound to be an upside for us.
Yeah. Well, for Nepto then, did you have something else?
No.
Yeah, for Nepto, I figured out an interesting way to approach this. Philadelphia might be receiving the best player and the best draft compensation in this trade. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I mean, the
how does that
Arizona
happen
first,
usually?
not sure where it will land, but somewhere down the line, which I don't know if I like it. I know Brooklyn is cap strapped before this trade, so they wanted to probably make room for the future. But this 8th pick could have been a significant part of the future. Benson Royal is still a good piece, but doesn't fit the team. You just resolved your logjam at center last season, and now you have it again. With not enough wings, I believe, so far.
Well,
so
Hatfield, Sharp,
how...
and Goto. So that is 3 all across 1, 2, 3.
All right, they got Sharp still.
They just.
And I like it a bit more.
Yeah, they moved the logjam they used to have at center to small forward, and now it's back to center to, I guess, serve Sharp better, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for Philly, they kind of more all in with Javon Devon, moving up the timeline. At the same time, getting a good young player, so that's good for them. Not sure what's in it for the Inferno. Not a fan of Austin, especially since he's already year 6 now. But
yeah,
I'm sure
think it's
Overlord will have a plan in mind.
Yeah, I think it's just because of the dire need of ball handling, like any sort of ball handling, because point guards are not that easy to come by, apparently.
All right, you're on the Inferno as well, so
yeah.
I could have asked you.
Yeah. But let's see what's behind door number 2, as Brian Austin is moving to the San Diego Corsairs, and in return for San Diego's season 82 first rounder. Pretty much just echoing the thoughts from previous. Corsairs also like to have a point guard player, not necessarily to start, even although I don't know if their like starting point guard situation is solid enough for the future years, so maybe it's more of a platoon currently. And apparently Inferno like the odds of season 82 San Diego Corsairs pick better than Austin's steady hand, or steady as it is, hand. Currently the draft board then shows as such, and will be moving on to the 8th overall selection, which now belongs to the Philadelphia Prowlers. And they are selecting, I can't remember, I looked this up, there was some sort of like a funny, I don't know, like a homeowners association type of like abbreviation that was GJCAG, But Caligula is the, well, yeah, let's just go with info. 8th overall selection, Philadelphia Prowlers, GJCAG Caligula. Point guard / small forward of the Quad City Asylum. So all told, Prowlers eventually end up getting 2 small forward eligible players. Do you guys any thoughts on this? Because Caligula could theoretically also be the starting point guard as early as his rookie season.
So could Devon. I mean, he's also point guard small,
Yeah.
right? So I would suspect from the profile that it's more going to be Devon at the start of it, especially since they have a lot of other guys that can play small forward, but not that many point guards.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately for him, it looks like he will start off the bench. But maybe that can grow because the team above him isn't the youngest anymore. And maybe he moves up with a couple of the other young guys on the roster.
Yeah, reasonable numbers, if those are indeed his.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, from 2 times the assists of his turnovers, or even 2.5 times nearly, and a very healthy 58.2% true shooting at 6'3". So if there's like some sort of a lightning in a bottle with this shooting, and could be a very good player in spot minutes, and could be a very good player on like any sort of team that are just like looking for work at point guard positions. Tomato, do you have thoughts on Caligula being picked here?
I think I agree with you guys. He's going to be playing backup for now. But I also do think with Benson Royal being moved and acquiring... I am so bad with this. Devon.
Yeah.
I do think that Philly is going all in on trying to compete this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because they also do have, if you look at the ages of their players, they kind of have a very nice composition. Whereas with Devon, now they have 4 of these older guys who are kind of ready to go now.
I guess
and
3.
Yeah.
And
a bunch of...
Yeah.
True. I forgot about Austin. So 3 guys that are mature and ready to compete right now, and 3 now 4 with Caligula guys ready to grow into these positions, starting off as supporting pieces, and then kind of taking over in a couple of seasons. I think it's a nice setup.
Yeah, I think so too. It's interesting to have some sort of like a notorious player like Jaden Chabarkapa, like a massive scorer, year 7, and then Marcus Slade, year 8, and then also still have room in today's cap environment for 4 high potential young players. So maybe all things told, like, or even added fact of Devon. So Philadelphia making some real good moves here lately.
Yep.
Speaking of moves, Marcus Wood is Inferno really cleaning house of point guards. Marcus Wood is headed to the Toronto Thunderbirds, and Inferno are receiving the upcoming 9th overall pick in return. Let's see who's behind number 9 overall before we get to discussing the merits, the board. And Dane Swan, a point guard, that's 3 point guards in 15 minutes for Arizona. Well, I guess Wood was there previously, so just 2. And Dane Swan's point guard only eligible player from the Louisville Lions, and a very, very that's sort of like a standard bread and butter player build, I feel like. Thoughts on this selection for Arizona?
I think it's a good move. They needed to move on from Marcus Wood. He wasn't going anywhere.
Well, he
Dane
just went,
is,
I
mean, let's just
yeah.
You know what I mean. And Dane is he is, as you said, bread and butter, but you kind of want a lot of that butter on your point guard, unless you have like a Rossi or something. Mm-hmm. So it's just a great piece to pick up. He's gonna be ready to contribute right from the get-go. I believe. Is this a first gen? I think this is a first gen, right? I don't
Yes,
recognize
it's a
the
first gen.
one. Yeah, so that's even better because if you have a first gen who has this nice a build, that means it's a person that is smart enough to kind of listen to the right advice and know how to build even as a first gen. And from my experience, first gens are also very often more kind of willing to take one for the team, which is great in a point guard.
Or listen to advice. That's
Or listen to
yeah,
advice.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
also very true.
Because like
So
sometimes those two are like they have a very influential like relationship. Like taking one for
Yep.
the team, you don't actually recognize that you're taking one for the team until later. But yeah, I think Overlord is a much more honest communicator than my previous or past examples from the past would be. So you are it correctly. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I wanted to say actually, is that Overlord is a great guy who knows how to build this type of player, and I'm sure will be a great source of advice for Dane as he's kind of growing through the growing pains of going into the SBA.
Yeah. Apparently my cracking of my knuckles came out into the broadcast, so apologies on that if anyone out there doesn't like that. But yeah, welcome to Arizona for Dane Schwann. 10th overall selection time, Cameron Bailey III is heading to the Brooklyn Bullets. Hard over height 3, player agency, point guard / shooting guard, 6'4". A very, very interesting attribute radio. So let's just check that that's correct. It seems like it would be correct.
Yeah, seems about right.
Yeah, because I saw this. Yeah. So 80 inside with 70 quickness and 0 strength and jumping. 57.5% true shooting off the back of 40.9 3-point percentage. So excellent performances in the SPDL. But as we know at this point, the Brooklyn Bullets do have a lot of players that are gonna require a lot of accommodations. So Cameron Bailey, I think he'll be a gunner from the bench to start off with.
Definitely going to be the bench in my opinion.
Yeah, but
I
the
mean, we
gunner
talked
part
over the
is more
guys that are in
interesting.
Brooklyn right now,
Yeah.
and as soon as Sharp popped up on that list, I think it's pretty sure he's going to come off the bench as like a combo guard. Still has some nice passing and handling, but will certainly need a lot more athletics before he should look to add anything like jump shot or something like this. But I think for bench scorer, going to be a good first season, although in limited minutes.
Yeah, and high stealing as well. Yeah. I was gonna say something else, but I'll get back to it if I remember what I swear it was not gonna be a comment of this guy's hairline, since I'm not in any reasonable moral space to comment on other people's hairlines. So with all that out the way, we'll move on to the 11th overall selection, where the San Diego Corsairs are selecting Caleb Grant. And Caleb Grant earlier mentioned as a top prospect in the entry draft here. Shooting guard, 6'7", of the Nothing But Net 21 player agency, falling all the way to 11th. So what gives, Nepto?
Well, it's interesting that the Corsairs pick him. I'm not entirely sure about their wing rotation, but I believe they still had CIA's guy, right?
Oliver Kincaid.
Yes, and Bridges there as well, so he would have to come off the bench, which I'm not sure NBN is looking to do.
Yeah, or pending a trade of
or pending a trade. That's true. So maybe they get some additional movement. As I said, I think he would be a great fit if you have a good defensive team around him and you just want him to grow into that offensive option. I don't think the Corsairs are that team on defense.
Year 9,
And I
Yannick
don't think
Reisinger.
he's good, but they're not on the level defensively that they would need to be,
Yeah, as a collective.
and they don't have the time to wait for him to grow into a real SBA bona fide scorer, because he will need that time, especially as a guard. But Freisinger is year 9, Bridges is year 8, if they keep him. Kincaid, Syncroft are year 5, year 6. So you still have not the youngest core and someone who would need time to grow into his role.
Yeah.
Let's see how it shakes out.
Do you think there's a possibility of just like starting Grant and putting Bridges on the bench, since like Zeke's been away from SBA for like a month now, I think?
I mean, you could do that if you would be more concerned about retaining Grant than winning games.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure with their age structure that's what they are aiming for. So
yeah,
at the moment, Bridges is just a more complete player, and also physically and from a shot profile more involved than Grant will be as a rookie.
Yeah. Well, also quickly then, Tomato, we can discuss what's sort of if you were with this selection then looking to trade Bridges like now this offseason, what sort of player would you even be targeting then? Because you have Freisinger and Seakoff and Kincaid and then apparently Grant. And point guards, you're not gonna get a point guard for an inactive 8-year-old player just because point guards are in so high demand.
Yeah, that's the issue, because you kind of
pretty much seems like the courses are sort of like fucked.
Yeah, a bit, because exactly what they need right now.
Yeah.
Would if they move on from Bridges, would be a great point guard who can set up Caleb and let him do his thing. Because Grant is just he's a great scorer. It's like the build, great, amazing, but scoring shooting guards need the right team around them to really work as well as they want to. So I'm not sure if Eric Fish is the point guard for the job, but I'm also, as you said, not sure they can get a point guard for an inactive year 8 Ezekiel Bridges.
Yeah, like you would have to do a lot of shaking to get a player like this. Is just like one very poor example, but a Kenza Goto. You'd need to trade both Freisinger and Bridges for combined value, and even Brooklyn wouldn't accept that as it is. You would have to get something from someone else for those 2 players just to get enough to pay for Goto, if you get what I'm saying. So it's yeah, their like contention window is still on, but it's very, very narrowly shutting down already, I think. And this, I don't think they had much options either, so it's just taking the best player available, which is very admirable and commendable, but still a difficult situation for San Diego. With the 12th overall selection, the Seattle Knights have selected Marjon Slaughter. Marjon Slaughter, a center power forward player, 6'11", from the Jurupa Valley Jackals at 429 TP. That's pretty strong to be picked here, 12th overall. Nepto, your thoughts on Seattle getting another player of this position?
Maybe as a comment, I think this number already factors in his carryover, which is why it's
possibly
so high. Because he had some from his previous player. The Seattle organization is already familiar with Hasegaard. He played there before, so I think this is a bit of a homecoming. From a team perspective, interesting to see that they now have a scoring center, most likely, or power forward. Then Ben Lass as like the rebounding specialist in the middle. And then on small forward, they will have to put Clarkson and not on power forward. So we have a scoring small forward and center, or power forward going forwards, which is not the perimeter big duo that Tomato spoke of earlier today.
Yeah.
So we will see. I mean, it's a good core. You now have 3 young players to build around, and you just need some guards around them. You still have a guard for a couple of more years. Just need one more.
Yeah. Yeah,
I guess they kind of need to move on from Kaze as
yeah, or
not
just
enough
make him a
space.
backup.
I don't think they have enough to afford playing him as backup though. That's the thing, yeah.
Well, if you play these two and then you play Kaze as a backup.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because it's 3 players occupying 2 positions. You have to make some of them a backup or just, yeah, like you said, move on from Kaze. But yeah, it is interesting. And I think a really good player. Like I was saying with Grant, taking the best player available, like it's 50-50 if actually Grant was the best player available. Yeah.
If he sticks to his career. I mean, I don't like to do this, but after Wigner also retired early, you don't have a guarantee that Grant will play his full 8 seasons.
Yeah,
With
but
Slaughter, I'm more confident he won't earn as much. That's for sure. But he's a bit safer in that regard.
yeah, possibly. And after having played so many seasons in Seattle with Jojo McDaniels already, like I think there's a good working relationship sort of thing going on. So it'll be good. Both teams, or at least like team and player here with Slaughter, are going to be very happy with the combination. With the 13th overall selection, we have Scud Muffin going to Milwaukee Maulers, power forward / small forward, 6'9". Milwaukee Maulers are in a bit of a limbo period now after, I guess, Benjamin Strang Walgren was the glue holding it all together somehow. I don't understand how, but apparently so. Where you have the best point guard in the league, starting his 8th season now with Lemony Snicket, but not a lot of good players around. Like there's Theodore Walker, there's animated MRI Machine and Fire Aloheta, but none of them scream like a guy to pair up for a championship run. So feels like Maulers are sort of stuck in a limbo now, especially with this sort of a low draft pick. Do you agree, Tomato, that?
Yeah. I think you're on point, which is kind of weird, you know, having a big snout year 8 and just kind of being But I have faith that Abaddon knows what he's doing, and honestly, Scud Muffin at this, because we're at 13 already, I believe he's a great pick at that value. Just nothing wrong with his build. Pretty standard for a power forward, small forward. Probably wants to shore up some blocking, but I'm sure that's on the way.
Yeah, indeed. And there might be a starting spot open depending on what happens with the shooting guard position or Theodore Walker in general. So yeah, good pick all in all, but just interesting how the Maulers are in this situation. 14th overall selection, Khalil Jackson Davis. That's Trace Jackson Davis is called Jackson Davis as well, right? Yeah. That's where it was familiar from. 6'11", center / power forward of the Freddie Kempton Jones player agency. Played big man minutes inside for Quad City Asylum with 2.2 blocks, 11.2 rebounds in the SBDL last season, and now headed to the Pittsburgh Ironmen. Pittsburgh Ironmen are, of course, most famous for their starting center currently, Bunny McBride, but also they have a very strong up-and-coming player at the power forward position in Jaxa Bozo. So Jackson Davis, unfortunately, might be looking at some bench minutes this starting season, which is in a way a shame, but what can you do, really? Thoughts on Freddie Kempton Jones's Jackson Davis going to Pittsburgh?
I like the pick. I mean, we're going to be teammates apparently, unless there's a draft day trade. No, it's a good.
You're
good
getting traded. I didn't know.
So there's a good defender, a good rebounder, also passes a bit. So could be a good complementary piece to whenever McBride or Bozo are resting, and the other one needs more touches and more support. So I think I like it. Shame for him that he will most likely ride the bench, as you said already. At least for the first season. And then we will see how the team develops. I mean, there's still at least 6 players now deep.
Yeah, that brought me to think about like how many teams are there actually. How many players or how many teams there are actually where you could start as a rookie power forward / center, and I don't think that's a lot of teams. So yeah, best of luck in Pittsburgh. And moving on to the Pew trade alert, Ocelots are receiving the next pick, 15th overall, in exchange for Miami's first, which just went earlier to Mexico City in the other trade with Miami for their 4th and 3rd overall selection. So Ocelots get 2 Vancouver firsts and this 15th pick for going down 1 position. That's pretty good, I'd say. And the board is as such, and the 15th overall selection is Nils Lani Pekkinen, Ukko-Pekko Luki. That's very interesting. I sandbagged the shit out of that on purpose. Zetterberg's point guard / shooting guard, 6'1", played for the Beaumont Barons. Aside from the gargantuan name, which I think is like on the limits, because you're meant to be limited to 16 characters first name and 16 characters last name, and this definitely looks like 16 plus 16 to me. Other than the gargantuan name, what do you guys think about Zetterberg's newest player heading to Mexico City as well?
Mostly I'm just surprised how many players Mexico is picking, because I feel like it's just Mexico and Mexico and Mexico all over.
Yeah, every 3rd pick is Mexico.
Yeah, but he's a perfectly fine build. Just a classic point guard. I'm seeing a lot of quickness, a lot of stealing, a lot of passing, a lot of 3-point shooting. Honestly,
much higher 3-point scoring than the standard, I think.
True, that's true. But I think the passing is well on the way to balance it out.
Yeah.
Honestly, if it were me picking, I would probably have taken him earlier over some of the other guys we've had.
Just because of the position?
Yeah, just because of the position and the build, and we've seen a couple of people getting picked just to play backup.
Yeah.
When a guy like I'm sorry, I'm not even gonna try. But when a guy like this could just kind of slot in and
Nils. That seems
Nils.
like
Okay. Where Nils could just kind of work in a lot of those teams, but Mexico is taking advantage of that because everyone needs BGs, and I'm sure they're gonna get great value out of him as a player or a trade piece later. Who knows?
Yeah. Unfortunately, for a lot of teams, we were saying that a lot of players pick to ride the bench. They seem like a future investment sort of thing. But for Mexico, they pick a player at point guard position who also somehow happens to be sort of a future investment. So it's very interesting to see how Mexico City is going to juggle all these players, and remind you all, coming off a 15-win season with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half active players last season. So very interesting. Moving on to 16th overall selection, where the St. Louis Battalion are selecting Andy Lamb. Lamb, a shooting or small forward / power forward player at a very healthy 3-point shot diet, very reminiscent of the exact Niels player attribute radial that we just saw, other than passing maybe being 20 ticks lower. So a good role player in that sense, or do you agree, Nepto?
Certainly a good role player, a very 3-point specialist, if this is right. I mean, that looks extreme, which is something we don't see every day at the small forward, power forward spots. But I think he has a good build, even if he ends up not improving after all, as sometimes is the case with first gens, especially picked this late in the round. Then he's going to be a productive player in the minutes that he gives any team. So great pickup for St. Louis, and I hope he continues earning.
All right. That's a good way of saying it. 17th overall selection time. Matthias Porter Kane headed to the Los Angeles Rush of their finals berth this past season. Pariah, oh hello Pariah. Point guard / shooting guard player. 6'4". Yeah, very similar attribute radial once again to the past two players, Lamb and Niels. Pariah, I can't remember anything of a specific relationship with the Los Angeles Rush management, but surely they know each other, so if Pariah wants to stick around, it'll be cool, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure for the Robinson, the first one. What was his first team? Was it LA? And he then moved on to Charlotte? That's a long time ago.
So, which Robinson?
Jack Robinson, yeah.
Jack Robinson.
Wasn't it? I feel like it was
Colorado or whatever.
No, it was not Colorado. No. Not the.
Wasn't it the Goliath Vipers? Or am I talking out of my ass? No, that was someone else.
He was indeed with the Rush.
Yeah, it was with the Rush. Okay. Seasons 52 and 3 at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But so the GM was the same still. Yeah.
I don't think Cassie was the GM.
Yeah, because that would be 27 seasons at this point. So I
mean, Cassie has been at for a long time in LA now, but I think 52 was not it.
Yeah, that feels like it could have even still been Steve-O. I can't remember. Someone will surely message us in the wherever they message us to correct this information, have it more strict. But yeah, that automatically means Pariah has a connection to the Los Angeles Rush franchise. So yeah, good on him, and hopefully it pans out in a way they want. 18th overall selection, Kiljua Zoldek. Is there some sort of a pun here? I'm not sure.
That's a filler player from Glue.
Yeah, but it might be that I'm saying something like very offensive, but I didn't recognize it.
No, I think it's something like similar to his.
It's an anime character.
Oh, okay.
It's an anime
yeah, well, that's a slur in itself. So saying anime character, some people are gonna be very like, yeah. 19th overall selection, then another filler with a much more standard name that I don't need to be afraid of. Billy Joel going to the Houston Ravens. And then
it's not a filler though.
Oh yeah. Oh, we talked about this. It was not a filler, it just didn't have a screen. So talk to me about Billy Joel for a moment, Nept.
I mean, pretty straightforward guy. As people might have read already, just won the SBDL Defensive Player of the Year. Great at shot blocking. Yeah, great at shot blocking, can steal the ball a bit as well. So great fit for what the Ravens want of someone towards the end of their bench, and doesn't cost them any salary this season.
Yeah, for anyone listening, they don't cost salary because they were below 250 TP at the time of rollover, so they are not in a salary bracket. So it's a player better than a filler that might not cost anything still. So it's good. Just normal business at the late ends of the draft.
That's the secret behind the Ravens' success. They just don't pay their players.
Yeah, circumventing the salary cap for ends and on ends. Let's then see what was here. Calvin Lucian going to the Brooklyn Bullets, and Aviators receiving the last pick of the draft in exchange for the filler. And Yoterd Kirkpatrick is selected as, I suppose, Mr. Irrelevant. I've never used that word before, but I think that is correct. Yeah, for Charlotte, who always like a bit of new players, so they can keep wheeling and dealing. And yeah, and Charlotte things have stalled out a lot. So just like getting anyone, starting something with active players and people who take part and participate, that's automatically pretty fun. So Yotir possibly could just be a starter and do whatever and enjoy his time, at least in the first season, while Charlotte gets their things in order a bit more. Then we had this pew breaking news in the middle of the draft presentation. 3 players we've been mentioning all the draft are on the move now. The Wayniest Galizzi, Josh McBuckets III, and next season's OKC Rampage first overall selection is going to San Diego for Oliver Kincaid. So that opens, actually that doesn't open playing time for Caleb Grant, because neither Grant or Bridges is legal to play small forward. Hopefully Thierry knows this much, but if not, he'll find out in the draft presentation. And yeah, cool. Well, I guess you also have the Buckets and the Galizis, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
I was right. I was right about OKC moving on from Buckets, just not who I thought they replaced them with.
Did you have this information while you said it, or no?
No,
Okay.
I did not. I just said they seem like similar players, so it makes sense to replace them. But I guess they're both being moved instead. So
neither is good enough. Rampage says that neither is good enough. Yeah, but actual analysis, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have one big question. Who thinks that Obadiah Christ is coming back to OKC now?
With this
trade?
Are you asking who thinks, or do we think?
Yeah, just your opinion on it, because I mean now they've got more top-end talent than they had before in the form of Kincaid.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a motivation to return.
What if you go back to San Diego instead to play with your former teammate McBuckets, now that they also have like sort of...
I don't think they have any cap.
Yeah, but if you can if you can make
Bridges
if you can make Bridges go to Vancouver and stuff like that, yeah.
I mean, they might still have the cap. I'm not entirely sure.
It's very interesting because Obadiah Christ did play for San Diego as well, but I think this, like, your idea is much more reasonable. I'm like sort of like pulling at invisible strings just for the fun of it. What do you think, Tomato? Is Christ gonna return? It's well past Easter, but anyway.
Well, I think it's definitely a move in the right direction if they want to get Obadiah back, because there wasn't really much to work with, but now with Kincaid, it's kind of looking nice, I guess. It's depending on what other offers Christ got in the meantime, I think.
Yeah.
But I would imagine if KG is making this move,
he knows something.
Yeah, he knows something. Either Christ is coming back, or
he's never coming back anyway. Yeah. Either he is or is never coming back anyway, and there's some sort of an alternate reason. But yeah, makes sense. I agree. Then the final draft board here, we have Tentacles, Laws, Jimenez, McLeod, Ito, Alan Richmond, Galizzi, Caligula, Swan, Bailey III in the top 10, and then Grant and Slaughter on the outskirts for a bit of a surprise, actually. Rounding out with Muffin, Jackson Davis, L. Luke, Niels, Lam, Kane, Zoldyck, Joel, and Kirkpatrick. Yeah, Mexico City made a lot of actual work out of their top 3 picks, even though they only selected 1 at the first overall. But let's go in order of Nepto and then Tomato. Who are the big winners of this draft, of the Season 80 SBA Entry Draft?
I kind of want to say Miami and
Don't
Mexico.
say Houston.
No, not Houston. for once. I mean, maybe next time they come around with 5 high draft picks again.
Or maybe they are the winners, just that we don't know it yet.
That also could very well be. No, I think Miami and Mexico both made the trades and the picks they wanted to make. Especially Miami gets perfect fit for the system. Mexico gets a couple assets from the Wolverines, gets some good players for the now, that can start growing immediately. So I think those two teams are the most pleased with their draft.
And the Tomato.
I would agree on Miami. I like what Miami did this year with the draft. They made some smart trades, smart moves, and I also think, knowing Jeff, knowing what he does, I think these Vancouver picks might end up being really nice. Though the cost of 2 straight first round picks is kind of on the counterbalance end of.
Yeah, about that cost, I was looking up a piece of information, so I'm not sure if you mentioned, but for Mexico City, all these players and all the future draft assets is making it very interesting, because I guess they're just playing some sort of a different game where it's asset quantity over actualized quality for now, of course, because these players are developing. But I would agree, just on the virtue of having picks number 1 and 3, and then getting all this for your picks 1 and 3, I think Mexico City would be the winner if I had to select one. And then begrudgingly, I'd put Vancouver at 2, just because I know the inner workings and thinkings behind the scene there. Then the famous, who's going to be the most likeliest future Hall of Famer of this group of players? Tomato, we'll go with you first. Who's your selection?
I think it might be Ben Lass, if only because of if he can manage to break some rebounding records. I think that might be enough. Throw in a positional in their peak, or like a defensive players here or there somewhere, and I think that's enough with some rebounding records, because we've had a few people trying to go for that, but obviously things get derailed on the way.
Yeah. Nepto, who's your future Hall of Famer of this draft class of season 80?
I hate to say it, but there's nothing that really jumps out to me right now. I will go on a limb and say Dunbar McLeod.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can't say no, even if you think it's no one.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Dunbar McLeod. Maybe as one of those first gen guards who really excel at like their floor general role, get a lot of assists, maybe some good team success as well, and then 1 or 2 positional awards, and then you might look at one of those first gen Hall of Fame players.
Yeah, could have a Mac Wolf-esque career. My pick is just to be safe, sort of, in a way. I was debating between Tentacles and Ito, and I'm gonna go with Ito just because, like, I suppose, like, Jeff has the highest pedigree of anyone here. Yeah, I think anyone. Highest, not the largest, but the highest. All right, that about wraps it up. Do we have anything else? What's on the next slide? Oh, it's just the first slide. So yeah, here we have the full complete SBA Entry Draft results and the full complete SBA Entry Draft presentation. Yeah, I'm gonna cut this part out. No, I'm not. But if you don't see any tweets on the screen during the presentation previously, it's because there were no tweets. But if there are tweets, then you saw the tweets. Have fun with that conundrum. And what I did was to have fun with Tomato and Nepto. Thank you very much for joining once again.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us and doing all the hard work.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily that hard. It's a little bit of work. Yeah, I shouldn't say that because they're gonna take my TPE away. So yeah, I was working like day and night. So,
Which TPE are you getting?
Yeah, like all the TP. Like, yeah. Thanks everyone for listening, for watching, and we'll see you again soon, if not for season 81 draft presentation. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.